is a feeling and experience that we create to culture, and it's everyone's responsibility. We have to manage these brands internally before people feel the need to go external. And that just involves doing the right thing. So just because you're marketing doesn't mean that you can't shift to work with HR or other leaders. We should all be working together because it all impacts the employer brand. When we look at culture and we talk about it from a marketing perspective and a brand ambassador employer brand, we want it to feel seamless. We want the experience to be as good on the inside as it is on the outside and vice versa. And in order for that to happen, we have to be able to really talk to each other, open up those lines of communication, hear all voices, be willing to change and shift, even as we have throughout this past 18 months. We have to be able to come together.
Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Internal Marketing Podcast, where we flip the marketing conversation from external to internal, exploring all the ways we can build a brand and drive growth through engaging and empowering employees to become powerful advocates of the company brand. And today we're going to be having an interesting discussion about culture, which, as we'll discover, is a crucial part of the internal marketing conversation. But before we jump in, if you're looking for more practical resources and powerful perspectives about building a great company culture, then the Happy Monday Club is the place for you. Every Monday, the team over at Workshop puts together an inspiring and uplifting list of articles from some of the world's best workplaces, along with their latest internal marketing and communication templates. And, of course, there's the occasional giveaway or surprise. The Happy Monday Club newsletter is designed to help you create a positive, supported, impactful culture at any company size. So, join over 10,000 culture-focused leaders today and sign up at happymondayclub.com. And of course, the Happy Monday Club is brought to you by Workshop, or Season 2 sponsor. So let's jump right into today's conversation. And I'm anxious to introduce you to my guest. I'm meeting her virtually like this for the very first time, and I'm very excited. She's someone I've been following on LinkedIn for quite some time. And when you follow someone and you see their content and you recognize that you're so aligned in terms of your value system and how you see business, how you see people, how you see culture, I really want to have a conversation. And I was saying to her, she's the very first HR professional that we're having on the show. And so I'm very excited to introduce her to you. She's Tiffany Castagno, and I hope I got the pronunciation correct. Tiffany, welcome to the Internal Marketing Podcast.
Yes, you did get it perfectly. Thank you. Our names are important, right? And I have to say that I'm super jealous that you're in Kingston and Jamaica. Jamaica's the second home for us, and I just have to wait till December. So thanks for having me.
Oh, we'll be happy to have you. That's wonderful. Well, I'm so glad you get to come back. I mean, this past year and a half has been crazy. It's really something. So thank you so much for being a part of the show, for accepting my invitation. We're going to have an awesome discussion today. I know you're an HR consultant. We're going to get to know more about you, who you and what you do a little later on in the show. But let's just jump right into it. We said we're going to be talking about culture, and I like to always start off with a level setting a question just to make sure we're on the same page when we talk about culture. What is culture exactly, Tiffany, from your perspective and in your experience?
Yeah, I've been asked this a lot of times, and I think a lot of times people want to know because it sounds so fluffy, right? Culture is something you can't touch and feel. But I actually had a LinkedIn post yesterday, and to me, so I'll use this analogy again while it's fresh in my head. And it's a lot like the couple you come over and you can tell they've been fighting before you get to dinner, or the couple who's affectionately holding hands and welcoming of their guests, right? Good culture is the couple holding hands and the couple that welcomes all ideas and guests, and they're just, and the cultures that aren't so great are the ones where it just, you can feel, you walk in, the energy's off, you can tell that things are hushed, something happened but you're not really sure, you can feel it. It's the fiber, the DNA of the organization. And we talk a lot about mission, vision, values, and I know that we share that alignment in values, but that has to play a part too. Are we just living it? Are we actually living it? Or is it just what's on the walls? And so there is a feeling and experience that we create to culture, and it's everyone's responsibility.
I love that you ended that way. It's everyone's responsibility, because that would have been my follow-up question, Tiffany, which is who owns culture? I think there are lots of opinions on that. A lot of people think, oh, culture is HR's job. Let them take care of it. Who owns culture in a company?
It is truly everyone. And I love that this question usually comes up too when we talk about culture, and it has to, especially because culture is so dynamic, it's very fluid. And we think a lot of times, well, our mission and our value are static most of the time, but the vision can change, right? And so we think that our culture can't change and that we have to be a certain way. Well, then we box ourselves in. It is everyone from the leadership down. Everyone has to own that. So if we have a leadership team that's bought into doing the right thing, that's really driving the vision forward, but that doesn't match expectations or the experience that the employees are having, that's not going to be good, right? And then if we have middle managers who aren't aligned or aren't feeling like they can support their team, that their team can share their diverse ideas, we're not creating equitable access and inclusion, well, that's a problem. So that's why I said, like, where are you living that out? It's everyone's responsibility. And that's how you strike a real balance there.
I love that. And the fact that it's everyone's responsibility, certainly as marketers, we have a role to play. And I know we're going to get into that a little later on down. But before we get there, the next thought I had was when we talk about culture, and you gave the nice example of the couple holding hands at the beginning and so on, what makes a company culture good or bad? Or are there other adjectives that we'd use? What are those things that drive the positive or negative culture? If I hope I'm clear on that.
Yeah, I like that distinction because I think part of it is I try not to use good or bad either, right? But reality is that's how we relate, and positive and negative when we talk about different reinforcers in the workplace and driving positive behaviors, that's what it is. But there's tons of adjectives we could use. I think that, if we're agile, that's a good culture, meaning that we're not stuck in the status quo. We don't always have to do things the same way. We're not resistant to change. This past year has taught us a lot. And so the companies that are thriving and even frankly surviving and not losing people are the companies that are where people feel like they have an opinion and they're included, and where they're willing to make some changes and hear the employees' ideas and to really listen to what's going on in the environment. They're creating a positive experience. And those who aren't are maybe seeing some shifts, or they're having a lot of resistance to change. I think that when you look at leadership, for example, sometimes I talk about a lot how we leave our leaders behind because we haven't equipped them, or they were a great technical contributor and now we've promoted them, but we haven't exactly set them up for success. Well, how are they then going to set their team up for success? Culture is everything that we do. It is from onboarding till the time someone leaves. There's a full employee life cycle. And I think sometimes people forget that. So we can impact that negatively or positively through the experiences that we're creating.
Thank you. And I'm glad you gave that distinction, because sometimes I think we want to start out with good and bad or positive or negative, weak or strong. But as you said, there's other adjectives you can ascribe to culture, like an agile culture, but how that's manifested could be positive or negative depending on how that plays out. Are you able to give us some examples, I'm sure many, of companies that have great cultures that are really doing very well at it, and as far as the objectives they've set for themselves as an organization and their purpose, perhaps?
Yeah, so I'm really fortunate to work with these organizations, and those are the companies that I aspire to work with and who aspire to work with me because they are doing it right, and they might not have it perfect. Whoever does, right? If we aspire for perfection, I'm a recovering perfectionist, so maybe we try to get there, right? Because we want to do the right things. And that's what matters. And that's the difference between a good culture too, and maybe one that's not so great. And also objectivity, being able to drive on not that we don't have to ignore emotion, but we also want to be facts driven and data driven and put in some metrics. And not that people are numbers, but it matters. What are we measuring? And what we measure matters. So a lot of what I'm seeing with my clients right now is that they are very involved with their employees. They want this good culture. They want to make sure that when people come to work, they feel good about the work, that there's purpose and meaning in the work, that they're being developed, that their voices are heard, that there's this collaborative spirit in the environment. And literally, I've walked into a couple recently and I'm like, wow, you can just feel the culture. And so I'll describe for them. It feels like doing yoga. It's very zen and it feels warm and inviting.
Yes.
You walk in someone's house and it just feels lived in versus some of maybe places that are more industrial, right? And that's for me what it is. It creates a feeling, even as an HR consultant, walking into that environment. And so for me, that's really what I see. Also, people who are willing to say, these are our core values. We don't shift from those. This is what makes us. But then also, we're willing to move with that and we're willing to see what can happen and to flex and to hear out our clients, our stakeholders, our communities, and to do so in a responsible way.
I love that. As a sidebar, I mean, what has been your experience working with companies as they've been trying to navigate the pandemic in the context of their culture? What kind of shifts do you see companies that have been successful just moving with the ebbs and flows of what this past crazy 18 months has been? I can only call it crazy. Wow.
Oh, it has been a whirlwind. It's an interesting time for me. So, my business was started in the pandemic. So, that's the only world I know. I've only been remote, yes, up until recently. And so, this is a shift for me too. Now, getting out, going in front of my clients and having to help them navigate that and having to navigate it myself. And so, what I'm seeing is mostly hybrid function. I have a couple who they're like, oh, maybe we'll do the fully remote. Some people are leaning more towards closer to being in the office more full time. So obviously it depends on the industry and the client. But the companies that are really thriving are the ones who are listening to their employees. So there's a lot of surveys going around. I think we've seen that external to, the entire environment. Although I have seen some people, not in my clients really, but I've heard that some people are not asking. And then employees feel like, well, my voice wasn't even considered. So, how can we make such a huge change? That's an element of change management. You have to get all the stakeholders involved. And so then people feel like, wait a minute, this is being forced upon me. And so with my clients, I'm really fortunate that they're talking to people, that they're trying to figure it out. It is so complex. And every single one of them, it's different because some of them are essential workers and they have been this entire time, and others had the opportunity to be more remote. So these things factor in. And then, there's a whole mental health aspect to it too, and doing the right thing by employees there as well. It's very complicated, but I'm grateful that they're willing to let me explore with them and that they're able to be influenced to say, here's what I'm hearing. And how do we co-create these processes together to what's best for the employees, your stakeholders, and the business?
The power of listening, I'm just getting from what you're saying, just recognizing that you don't have the answers. We're going through a dynamic period that no one would have foreseen. So it's how do we tap into our teams to understand what their realities are and being able to respond to what it is we're hearing is what I'm saying. And wow, starting a business in a pandemic. You go, Tiffany. Wow.
I do. I've always said I love a good challenge. This has been my greatest one to date. So
Well, I think the timing is perfect. As you said, the fact that your clients have been allowing you to come in, because I think now more than ever, companies have needed to probably even toss whatever playbook they were using before, again, in such an uncertain time, and being open to someone like you coming in and supporting them. I think the timing was certainly great from the client's perspective, for sure. Well, let's transition a bit slightly in the sense that perhaps some people may still be wondering, well, why are we talking about culture in the context of internal marketing? So, of course, the ultimate objective of internal marketing is helping to drive employee engagement, and employee engagement in a way that creates buy-in, preferably emotional buy-in, into the company's mission, vision, and purpose, because the ultimate objective is we want our employees to feel so good about being a part of this company that they want to become advocates of the company brand as well. Now, from where I sat and why I even thought of this conversation is culture must play a crucial role in employee engagement. To my mind, you can't have one without the other. And I'm sure you would agree. So could you share with us, Tiffany, how does culture impact employee engagement from where you sit?
Sure. And a lot of times I see that as a very symbiotic relationship. So you can't really have one without the other. If you have a poor culture, you have micromanaging leaders and employees who feel like they're not being developed or their voices aren't being heard. Well, your engagement's probably going to tank, and you probably have a survey that's going to reflect that. You
Oh, yeah.
may not have even followed up on it or done anything with it. And now it's further tanking. Guess what? Now we impact retention and you are experiencing a lot of turnover. And if you're not, your employees are probably super jaded and they're like, why am I here? Or they're just coasting. They're not performing. We often see that. And so one does absolutely impact the other. If you have an environment where high potentials feel like they're celebrated, people know that kind of subpar performance and poor conduct isn't going to be tolerated, and they know that you're trying to do the right thing, that you care about them as a person first, because we're people first when we come into the workplace, hence people first approach. You hear a lot about that lately. And also care about their career development and their work, and let them have a voice, and you give them autonomy and space to learn and grow and the ability to make mistakes without being punitive. Those things go a long way towards our good culture. And guess what? Now we retain people and now we're not paying those high turnover costs. So it all goes together.
Yeah, such a great way to bring that in, because earlier when we spoke about the fact that culture is everybody's responsibility, it's not just HR. And certainly as marketers, our ultimate objective is to see about the growth of the brand and the growth of the company. So the next segue into the follow-up question is, well, how does employee engagement impact the company brand, which is a big concern for marketers? So from your perspective again, Tiffany, how does employee engagement impact the brand as it is portrayed externally?
Oh, it's so critical. It is so important. And I've seen situations where that has gone wrong, where someone's not happy, they have an axe to grind, and now they're out on Glassdoor, and the company's trying to pull back these negative reviews that are very detrimental. And that's not really easy to do. So that's something important. We have to manage these brands internally before people feel the need to go external. And the same is with risk, or people, they get upset and now they want to go to the EEOC. Well, that's not a good look either. You don't want to get on these federal and state agencies' radar either, because OSHA, we don't want to be on their radar. Do whatever you can to mitigate that. And that just involves doing the right thing. So if we manage our brands internally, get the right people around the table, even people can be frustrated by feeling like they have enough input. So you may feel like, well, these are the roles we have defined. So role clarity is another big one, and making sure that people know their roles. So just because you're marketing doesn't mean that you can't shift to work with HR or other leaders. We should all be working together because it all impacts the employer brand. And this is a lot of the work that I do to make it fun, really, is just like I co-create that with my clients, we should be doing that internally, because we don't want people going to Glassdoor or some external agency and making our lives miserable. And we become brand ambassadors internally when we're doing the right things and we have good culture and good engagement, good retention. When those things are not happening and when these values and these experiences are not aligned from company to employee, then that's when we get a bad brand. And I've seen it even on LinkedIn where people just go on bashing and they will tag the company, and you don't want that. But you could also have, I see such great things being done, and I've celebrated employees and colleagues and partners too, where there's this great thing on LinkedIn where you can say, yay, Kerry-Ann went above and beyond. And so that brings back great things for the organization too. So you can have people, you can choose which experience you want the public to see, and people will go above and beyond for you, and even on social media in a positive way, or they can do it in a negative way.
Absolutely. And I'm glad you said it best, which is you have to be managing the brand internally first. before you're even concerned about what's happening external, because what happens with the brand internally, you're going to get the glass doors and all the bashing and so on, which you don't want, which is going to negatively impact everything that marketing is trying to do. You're telling customers to come on in, we're great. And then the employees are like, no.
Run.
There's a big disconnect there. And I'm glad you mentioned roles, because that would actually be my next question is, so as marketers, yes, so we embrace the fact that culture is everybody's job. We're part of the team. What practically can marketing be doing as a function to impact culture and specifically employee engagement in a way that gets us to where we need to be from an internal brand perspective?
I love it. And I love my marketing folks. I will say I have lots of them in my network. Obviously, we're connected now. I'm super grateful for that. And that's been, I will say, throughout the pandemic and just before, maybe like in 2019, that's when I really got greater exposure to the marketing function. And now as an entrepreneur, a solopreneur, I really had to learn a lot because it's a whole different world over here. But it's so great because marketing is there to help boost the brand. And a lot of times I see that organizations are not giving them the love that they need. And marketing is seen as more as like, you make us look pretty and all the graphics and whatnot, and just set me up for the podcast and all these things. It's so much more than that. And there's this communication piece that goes in there too. So marketing can help kind of a channel for communications and highlighting what's going well, what's going on around the company. And also it's helpful for them to know what's going on in different departments. And I've seen this done so well, which is what helps open up my eyes to what the responsibility really is for marketing and just how critical this role is to the organization. So just like I, as an HR consultant, need to know what's going on, marketing does too. And they have to hear all the voices because then that all comes together as the employer brand. It's such a rich opportunity.
Yeah, I agree with that. And the marketing function coming from the place of, as you mentioned, communication as well, but understanding employees almost like a target audience. They can bring that analytical mindset to understanding the target audience. What are their goals? What are their dreams? What are their emotions, their needs? And how do we take that understanding of that audience, which are our employees, and then use that now to formulate campaigns, pretty much. I mean, that marketing can do, and in partnership with HR and other functional centers of excellence to drive campaigns and that bring that all together to get to the ultimate objective of a great internal brand. Any examples of companies and instances where you would have seen that play out practically in your experience that you could share with us?
One of my newer clients, it's cool. I was asking a probing question when I was having a conversation with one of the employees, and they were talking about this like Instagram takeover. And I'm like, what are we doing? Who's taking over what? Like, I wasn't sure what that meant. And we always have to ask clarifying questions, right?
Yeah.
But they allow their employees to have a piece of the voice in their campaigns that are external facing and even internally in terms of like their newsletter. And of course, hearing different voices and perspectives in your newsletter is great too. And that's a component that marketing can help build together and build that bridge too. As an HR person, I've had the opportunity to share my HR highlights, but also to say, I see that you're going to be talking about XYZ. Maybe we can incorporate that, and really partnering to build a strategy with your marketing, super helpful. So I've seen those types of things and just making sure that different voices are represented. I'm seeing my clients be very deliberate about that. And when you talk about both your internal marketing efforts and campaigns as that relates to engagement, retention, diversity, equity, inclusion, that displays to the external world too. And in the best case scenarios, if employees aren't seeing that happening, they feel empowered to influence that and to share, well, this is what I see as an internal person, and here's how it could be perceived externally. I think we need to demonstrate and showcase more women or more people of color, just different voices and opinions that are non-leadership. I've seen this work so many different ways. And when employees feel empowered, they're going to help demonstrate that brand to you externally too.
Yeah, I love that. We could talk forever about great examples of how marketing has been partnering with HR. I mean, I had another conversation with someone even about internal communications, and some companies have it in HR, some in marketing, but really and truly, it really comes comes down to how are we bringing all of the best of these functional areas together to support the whole matter of employee engagement and culture building and internal brand building. Where do you see the future of marketing going? I mean, obviously, we're on the backside of the pandemic, knock wood, and the wood on the forehead. It's such a great opportunity that we've had in this pandemic to rediscover so many great things about doing business, rediscovering our purpose, rediscovering our humanity, looking at each other as team members together in a company towards a common objective, and marketing recognizing too that it's not just again about the external customer, it's about the internal customer, the employees as well, and making sure that internally your shop is in order before you can put it out there with confidence. Where do you see the future of marketing going? Because, and why I ask the question, Tiffany, is that I say it to a lot of my marketing colleagues. I think the reason why marketing is so externally focused, because I always say it, I don't think the internal marketing conversation happens enough among marketers. And I think a lot of it has to do with marketing schooling, because I think as marketing, you are focused on the external brand. How do I get more customers to drive business? And that's great because we need customers to pay the bills. Not quarreling with that at all, but we don't spend enough time recognizing the kind of work that needs to go into supporting an internal marketing process. That should be part of an overall marketing strategy to go external. So from where you sit, what do you see the future role of marketing, or how that role is going to continue to evolve as we talk about culture building and employee engagement in the future?
I do think it's going to be one that's strategic. So, to exactly what you said, your strategic roles in any function in the organization, but marketing being one of those critical roles that doesn't get enough love sometimes, I feel like. So, sometimes we want to compartmentalize our departments and make them just this is what you do. And we're putting people in a box. Well, now not only are we not allowing our marketing team to grow and flourish, now the brand is suffering behind that because we're putting it in a box. And so we want it to be internal, we want it to be external. But if marketing can showcase the good that's going on behind the doors that no one sees, then it's naturally gonna evolve into the external market. And one example that I had from a client is that one of their external clients told them that they really feel the culture that they strive to, that however this client describes their culture is how their client told them, yep, that's exactly how we experience you. And I thought, wow, that is so cool. And then, they turned around and said, that's the same way we feel about you. So there is this definite relationship, and it's very much on that infinity continuum where marketing, HR, engineering, no matter what group it is, all have to come together, and there has to be a strategic outlook. So what from the top, whether it's the top of the marketing department and then feeding into all the way up to the CEO, those values and the strategic assigned priorities have to be aligned. So often you'll see meetings being had between like marketing or different leadership levels, but you also have to involve your employees. They may be facing, if you're in a sales role, you're going to know exactly what's going on. You need to get the voice of the customer there. And just because that may look external facing, there's absolutely an internal facing component because there are things from the external environment that impact your employees. You need to understand how that goes on and how you can help support them. Marketing is able to very fluidly tell this story and pull it all together. And really, I see it as a functionality of continuity too for the organization, and the ability to break down some of the silos is what I've experienced in the companies that are doing it right. And that's pretty powerful when you watch that happen.
Wonderful. I'm in agreement with everything you've shared. And I'm really excited about the future, actually, because even when we talk about culture and employee engagement through the pandemic and how I think the pandemic has helped to shift that in a more positive direction, I think it's the same thing for marketing as well. And I appreciate the fact that you empathize that we don't always get the love that we'd like to get. But I think it's the same thing too from a marketing perspective, in the sense that the pandemic would have showed that I think brands that have come out on the other end are those that chose to invest in their marketing in a fresh way, in a consistent way, in spite of everything that was going on. But back to your point, there's a wonderful strategic opportunity to get that alignment between marketing, HR, the functional areas across the company, starting with the CEO, incorporating everyone to really build that sense of what's necessary to drive a great culture that supports strong employee engagement and a great internal brand. Tiffany, this discussion has been wonderful. Thank you so much. But I always like to ask the question, what would you say is the biggest nugget? I mean, we've shared so much today, but I guess as our guest, for everything that you would have shared, what would you say is the biggest takeaway, the biggest nugget, as I like to say, you'd want our listeners to come away with having listened to this discussion?
I love that. I think when we look at culture and we talk about it from a marketing perspective and a brand ambassador employer brand, we want it to feel seamless. We want the experience to be as good on the inside as it is on the outside and vice versa. And in order for that to happen, we have to be able to really talk to each other, open up those lines of communication, hear all voices, be willing to change and shift, even as we have throughout this past 18 months. We have to be able to come together. And really, a lot of it is storytelling. So I would challenge people to say, what is the story that you want to be told about your brand, about your employees, about your organization? And how are you going to empower your marketing team and your employees to tell that story, whether it's internal or external?
I love that. What's the story that you want to be told? And again, how that story is reflected externally starts internal. That's a wonderful way to cap the discussion. Tiffany, thank you so much. I always love to invite my guests to tell me, how can we, the internal marketing tribe, support you?
Oh, thank you. Just keep rocking out, doing what you're doing and supporting my learning. HR people, we need you. We need to work together. And I'll put in a quick plug for HR people to leverage marketing, I've seen this work so well in practice. And so we need each other. For me, I would say definitely just help us as HR and the organization keep telling the story of the brand and keep being strategic and helping everybody else be strategic and keep being the glue, because that brand and that story is what keeps us all afloat. So we need it.
Yes, I'm with you on that one. And just to go back, I mean, I started at the top saying you're an HR consultant and you said you started your business in the middle of a pandemic. Could you share a little bit about your business, please? I'd love to hear more about that.
Sure. So what was recently relayed to me is my business being a pandemic project. I was doing a different podcast and that's what they called them. Like, well, I guess it is. But it's also a passion project. So something I've strived to do for a long time, in the sense that I've wanted to serve so many people in community and impact and just share the love on culture and how you put in infrastructure. And that's a lot of the work that I'm doing with my clients, is helping them either enhance the infrastructure they have, build new. They don't often have an HR department or anyone to help support those initiatives. So they're allowing me to help influence and shape. And we do a lot of strategic planning together on where are they at current state, where are they trying to go? And then I'll help them assess the gaps and what are the risks. And we make some recommendations. We have a whole lot of fun and it's very co-created. So it's every single client is customized for. So there's a framework, but it's customized to everyone. And that's really awesome. I work with small to medium enterprises and both for-profit and nonprofit and all across nationally, all different industries, which is great because it helps me learn and we just have so much fun together.
Sounds like fun. Wonderful. Well, congratulations with that. And I'm encouraging everyone to find Tiffany on LinkedIn, right? We're going to include your URL LinkedIn profile in the show notes and a link to your website as well. So whatever additional information, we're going to include it in the show notes. And of course, Tiffany, if and whenever you get to Jamaica, give us a call. We'll be happy to see you and have some jerk chicken or that sort of thing. It's wonderful.
I dream of it every day.
Yeah. Oh yeah, we're welcoming all visitors. So we look forward to having you join us. And thank you again. And of course, to all my wonderful listeners, thank you so much for joining in for another episode of the Internal Marketing Podcast. Of course, we are here continuing to serve you by driving the internal marketing conversation, flipping it from external to internal, where we want to support a conversation of encouraging activities internally that support employee engagement and advocacy. So feel free to continue to share the podcast with anyone who you think would find this information information useful. And we continue to wish everyone all the best. And of course, keep continuing to stay safe. Thank you and see you next time.